Tonight, a new report says the city needs a better plan when it comes to dealing with extreme winter weather like January's massive snowstorm.
And the snowbanks were actually over my head.
And for some residents, it took days, even more than a week, for their roads and sidewalks to be cleared. What city staff are recommending so that doesn't happen again. Plus,
the incidents took place within a certain radius, so it could have been the same drug provider that sold those substances.
Peel police issue a warning after they responded to 3 fentanyl overdoses within an hour of each other on Monday night. And
the inflation rate is today 6% and the diesel goes skyrocketing. We are saving nothing.
Dump truck drivers in the province have parked their vehicles in Mississauga, refusing to work in protest against unfair pay and working conditions. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. It was the biggest snowstorm we had in decades. 55 centimeters of snow were dumped on us in the span of just 15 hours back on January 17th. Well, now a review into that costly storm is out, and it's calling for a better plan to deal with extreme weather events in the future. Chris Glover has more.
180,000 tons of snow was removed from Toronto streets and sidewalks from January 17th's unprecedented snowstorm. The dirty aftermath still lingers. So too does the hope that never again will a snowstorm paralyze the city for days and weeks.
The banks were like this high.
Hazifa Hussein's Scarborough Street didn't get cleared until 3 days after the storm. While she waited, the city's online plow status map showed streets west of Victoria Park were plowed more regularly.
Topping the list would be an equity of service delivery in all parts of the city.
Our service should be delivered consistently, and that's what we strive for.
Today, Toronto's Transportation Services unveiled the post-mortem on the city's response. Snow removal alone cost more than $17 million, 20% of the annual winter maintenance budget. Staff are now recommending creating an extreme winter weather response plan with a centralized command center, a dedicated 311 storm hotline, and reviewing all snow collection depots.
Having an extreme response plan gets us better prepared for the types of fluctuation that we now need to expect.
A couple of problems that should already be fixed by next winter. Many newly purchased sidewalk plows weren't delivered until well after the storm. Plus, winter maintenance contracts are being streamlined from 47 contracts to 11, each with responsibility for a zone of the city.
This new approach will hopefully make it more efficient and reduce any potential conflict that may exist when you have competing contractors.
Right now, are you finding that municipalities prioritize road clearing as opposed to sidewalk clearing?
Typically, yeah.
The Ontario Disability Coalition says the new plan must prioritize sidewalk maintenance and clearing right down to the surface.
Rather than leaving 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters of snow, because under that 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters of snow, there could be a potential for ice and could cause a hazard.
The concept of creating an extreme winter weather response plan goes to the Infrastructure Committee next week, and if approved by Council, the new plan would be created by early 2023, hopefully before any wallop of snow next winter. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
Police in Peel Region are issuing a warning after 3 fentanyl overdoses within an hour of each other on Monday night. Now, all 3 happened in the same area, with first responders administering naloxone to one of the victims 6 times before they were revived. Natalie Collada reports.
It's just been steadily getting worse.
Overdose response worker Tim Fenwick isn't surprised by last night's string of overdoses. He says since the pandemic began, overdoses have nearly doubled.
We need to drastically change the way that we look at this because all of these deaths are preventable.
The overdoses are pretty serious. There were 3 males involved who were all transported to local hospitals.
It was a close call last night. Police say 3 men overdosed within an hour, all requiring naloxone in order to be revived, one requiring it to be administered 6 times.
We're concerned because the incidents took place within a certain radius, so it could have been the same drug provider that sold those substances. So they could have been sold to other local users as well.
In a statement to CBC, Peel Public Health says since the start of the pandemic, opioid-related overdoses and deaths have risen 36%, saying with the COVID-19 response beginning to stabilize in late 2021, Peel Public Health restarted priority work related to the opioid response through a focus on harm reduction.
What our service is uncovering is an opioid supply that is, increasingly more contaminated, more toxic, and less predictable.
Toronto's drug checking service has also tested over 5,000 drug samples since the pilot launched in October 2019. McDonald is concerned about what they're finding.
We're also seeing what are known as nitazene opioids present in fentanyl samples. So these are opioids that were synthesized in the 1950s to relieve pain, but were never clinically approved for market. They are considered to be kind of as strong or up to 20 times stronger than fentanyl. And we are actually finding them present unexpectedly in about 20% of the fentanyl samples that we check.
It's why harm reduction advocates say ensuring a safe supply is vital.
Regulating the drug supply would go a really long way. We need safe places for people to smoke. That's something that doesn't exist in Ontario at the moment.
And until it does, advocates worry the number of overdoses will continue to rise. Natalie Collada, CBC News, Toronto.
Dump truck drivers in the province have parked their vehicles in Mississauga, refusing to work as they rally for fair pay and better working conditions. Members of the Ontario Dump Truck Association say there hasn't been a pay increase since before the pandemic, with soaring expenses causing many drivers to leave the industry. Our Jessica Ng has more.
In Mississauga, dozens of dump trucks sit, their drivers refusing to work. That includes the owner of Chusa Truck Lines, Jasveer Dhaliwal. He says maintenance fees have increased, but wages have not.
We have to pay from our pocket $350.
That's per day, just to cover
the cost for the insurance, parking, for the fuel and the sticker plates.
And repairs, many done by the 25-year industry veteran himself. Whenever the company has a job,
we have to pay end of day $50 to the 75 more less. So we have to lose between 400 to 425.
The carbon tax increase slated for April is adding to the stress.
Maintaining vehicles or being able to pay for fuel or being able to pay for their cost of living.
The association wants a 40% pay increase. They say the last time it went up was before the pandemic, but it's not just about money.
Letting individuals eat their lunch while their vehicle is stopped and parked. There's a lot of safety concerns, labor law concerns.
Many say they haven't been permitted to access washrooms on job sites, especially during the pandemic. Others say they're regularly denied meal breaks and companies illegally overload their vehicles.
We really want to change the way this business operates here in Ontario.
Concerns echoed by the aggregate trucking industry, which transports materials for construction and renovations. It's resulting in a 10% loss of drivers there.
Our industry is dying. Our people, they're selling their trucks. They're getting out from this business.
Dhaliwal says he feels the effects most on his home life.
Do you think you have a work-life balance right now?
No, work-life balance at all.
The Ontario Dump Truck Association says its members' trucks will remain parked until there's a resolution. Jessica Ng, CBC News, Toronto.
Meteorologist Colette Kennedy joins us now with a first look at the forecast. And Colette, cooler and more overcast today as we await some messy conditions heading into tomorrow.
Yes, we have just about everything coming towards us as we go into Wednesday. You do want to allow extra time if you have to be traveling, but also you want to be really cautious because it's the kind of thing where as you're driving along, the conditions can change rather rapidly. So we do have the special weather and statement that we could be seeing, some ice from freezing rain, so slippery conditions, but also turns into rain and some significant amounts of rainfall. So we've got some higher levels to our streams and rivers, and you can see some ponding on the roads, and then very windy windy conditions with those winds out of the east. Then we add to that these areas, and especially you'll see this into the higher elevations towards the escarpment. We have a risk of getting into that freezing rain, so that a warning is in place. Doesn't mean we won't see it elsewhere, but just that's where we have the warning. So as it comes in through the overnight, through those overnight hours, a few hours to the west here, we'll be getting into that mix and some freezing rain. Then by morning, it pushes into the GTA and then eventually becomes mostly rain, not everywhere, but certainly closer to the lakeshore. But we're looking at 15 to 25 millimeters. So I'm going to tell you more about that ice buildup and that rain coming up. Overnight tonight, 0-2. Kelda, only 2 for the high tomorrow.
Thanks so much, Colette. As we first told you last night, the Liberals and the New Democrats have reached a deal that will see the NDP support Justin Trudeau's minority government until 2025. The Prime Minister made the official announcement today.
This agreement is not about compromising the core beliefs of either of our parties or denying the differences between us. What it is about is making sure that those differences don't stand in the way of delivering for Canadians.
Also at the news conference, Trudeau said the two parties would likely disagree on some issues, but would find common ground on others, including healthcare, housing, and the environment. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh says his party will withdraw its support if the government doesn't get behind NDP priorities like national pharmacare and dental care. Now, in Ontario, with the provincial election just over 2 months away, what are the chances we would see a similar political partnership? Lisa Shing takes a look at that.
What it does is say to Canadians that when you elect New Democrats, you can get things done.
Ontario's NDP leader on what the federal confidence and supply agreement means for Ontario. But Andrea Horwath was more cagey when asked about whether she would consider teaming up with the Liberals should the Progressive Conservatives win a minority government in a couple of months.
It's not about me, and it's not about Stephen Del Duca. It's about what Ontarians want to see for the future of this province, and how they vote is how we are going to have to respond.
Ontario's Liberal leader was more direct.
My mind is open. I'm prepared to have conversations.
But the government House leader was quick to dismiss the idea, referring to previous partnerships like in 1985 between NDP leader Bob Rae and Liberal leader David Peterson.
On every single measure where that has happened in the province of Ontario, it has led to difficult times for the people of the province of Ontario.
The federal agreement, though, will likely work in Premier Doug Ford's favor heading into the June election, especially for those in the middle of the political spectrum, according to this political science professor.
He may be able to depict to show that Liberals and NDP are the same. And if they vote for one or the other, they will form not a coalition, but they will strike an agreement.
Not only that, if there's a stable Liberal government in Ottawa, Ontario voters have shown in the past they balance that out provincially by voting blue. So it's no surprise the opposition is united on this, at least.
I know that Doug Ford is the wrong person for the job.
No to Ford, maybe to the others.
I will never, ever support a Doug Ford government.
But will voters agree? They'll decide June 2nd. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
Meantime, former Toronto Police Chief Mark Saunders is entering the world of politics to run as a provincial candidate for the Progressive Conservatives. Saunders will be the PC party candidate for Don Valley West. Now, that riding is currently held by former Liberal Premier Kathleen Wynne, who has announced she will not run for re-election. Saunders was Chief of Police from 2015 until his resignation in 2020. In a statement, Saunders says he's honored to be chosen by Doug Ford and that he admires Ford's strong leadership and dedication to Ontarians. Welcome back. As the war in Ukraine drags on, a network of activists and organizations have sprung into action to help members of Ukraine's LGBTQ community flee the country. And as Ali Chiasson tells us, there are plans to bring some of those refugees to Toronto.
For the LGBTQ community, fleeing war can be uniquely challenging.
When the war broke out, they were among the first group I got particularly terrified for.
Second-generation Ukrainian-Canadian Andrew Kushner is friends with and works with LGBTQ activists in Ukraine.
Ukraine is still very nascent in its LGBTQ+ rights movement. And in 10 years, I've watched this group of activists do incredible work. really shifting attitudes and really the dignity, amplifying the respect and dignity of these fellow Ukrainians.
They are now either trying to flee themselves or helping others.
There was also grave issues that trans people were facing, particularly trans women who may have an M marker, a male gender marker in their passports or ID, and the ways in which that was impeding trans women as they tried to navigate checkpoints within the country and their efforts to leave the country.
And the longer they stay, the closer they are to a health crisis.
Medications being cut off. So if you can imagine anyone living with HIV or anyone who is trans who is undergoing any sort of hormone replacement therapy, it's been a deeply scary couple of weeks. And I'm doing whatever I can from Canada to educate people, raise awareness about the plight of LGBTQ+ folks, and to direct support.
Toronto's Metropolitan Community Church has established a program to sponsor LGBTQ refugees fleeing Ukraine.
Financially speaking, the commitment is $18,250 per year. There is no requirement that individuals will have to go in their purse to contribute to the settlement efforts. We expect for the teams to really do fundraising activities, do initiatives that would help to make this a reality.
Teams of 5 people can sponsor a refugee for a year, and you can help in other ways too.
Just referring them to, family doctors when they come here, referring them for banking support, just helping with general integration.
The Metropolitan Community Church has been doing this work since 2007, bringing community around LGBTQ refugees from Afghanistan, Turkey, and now Ukraine. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Let's go back to Colette now with a look at your full forecast. And Colette, a messy commute for drivers tomorrow morning.
Yeah, really it is. That's why I was showing earlier in the show the special weather statement and the city included in that, but even some areas into a freezing rain warning as well, especially to the north and to the northwest of the city. So really messy conditions that can change pretty quickly on you. So watch out for that, especially earlier in the day. We are looking at a cooler day certainly as well. Tonight we're going down to freezing, but we'll barely get above it, and even into the afternoon, though it changes over to rain. We will bounce back, still have some wet conditions, but we'll bounce back on the temperatures into Thursday. So that risk of that ice accretion, so that's that buildup of ice. These areas especially, you can see to the northwest, some of those higher, that higher terrain, and even there it's, less than 1 millimeter to as much as 5 or 6 in a few cases. Pretty isolated where we'll see that. But when you factor in strong winds along with that, that makes things quite vulnerable in terms of tree limbs. If you get some buildup of ice and then the winds are very strong, can bring those down, can bring power lines down. So that's something to watch for the risk of power outages, but also to be looking out for just the fact that we're seeing 15 to 25 millimeters of rain, and that's going to probably cause some minor flooding, possibly some ponding in areas just because we've had so much melt and some of our water levels are quite high and running quite fast. So early morning hours, you can see some of that mix, and yes, even some freezing rain possible into the city, and closer to the lakeshore, better chance it's rainfall. And then later in the day, it becomes mostly that, just rain. Heavy at times, and even into Thursday, a little less organized for the beginning of the day, but by the time we get into the evening, we're looking at some more coming through, and even into Friday we have that chance. So these are all things. We've got a few wet and difficult days ahead of us. Those temperatures tonight, keeping it as rainfall back towards the Windsor area, but still that statement in place for the kind of slippery conditions we may have. And overnight tonight, those readings a little bit above freezing or just a little bit below, but really it's the case where you get warmer air overriding colder air at the surface, and then that rain can freeze on contact. All right, Thursday, there's that temperature coming up to 10, but still some rain into the forecast. Even Friday, the potential there, and even the chance for a mix as we go into Saturday, Kelda.
All right, thanks so much, Colette. A sure sign that spring has sprung. The cherry blossoms are in bloom in Washington, D.C. This is the annual festival now in full swing. The blossoms are out early this year, and that's thanks to the warmer than usual temperatures in the region over the past 2 months. And finally tonight, baseball wants to bring in more young fans. Many find the game too slow, so the game is turning to technology. And the Toronto Blue Jays are giving it a spring training tryout. Thomas Daig shows us how it works.
Spring baseball, a Florida tradition for a sport that thrives on history. Amid plenty of old habits, the Toronto Blue Jays are signaling innovation ahead.
It's unique. It's something that we're gonna try, and if they allow it, then at least we're ahead of the curve by trying it.
Rather than using one hand to tell the pitcher which pitch to throw, how about this instead?
They're using the communication button. Danny's got it on the inside of his left wrist.
New technology allowing the catcher to wirelessly transmit a signal. The pitcher hears the call in his ear, like fastball high inside.
Now Danny's punching in a pitch, and Trevor's listening right now. Okay, I got it, Siri. I'm good. Steps on the rubber. He's nodding.
It's known as the Pitchcom system. The catcher wears this small gadget while the pitcher hides a listening device in his ball cap. Baseball has become a tougher sell for younger audiences, accustomed to videos that last seconds instead of games that go on for hours.
Stop catchers from going out to the mound because they need to go over the signs, because base runners at second can look into the catcher and see what numbers he's putting out. So anything that's going to make the game quicker.
The minor leagues have tried some tweaks, like computer sensors, not umpires, calling balls and strikes, even a pitch countdown clock. But rarely have big changes made it to the big leagues.
Obviously, anything that benefits the pitcher and catcher and makes things go a little faster and, maybe keeps the opposing team from picking up signs, I'm open to it.
Yes, Pitchcom might prevent cheating, too, with memories of the 2017 World Series tainted over the Houston Astros sign-stealing scandal. Jays fans might one day get to see the new technology in action. The team soon returns home for the summer. Thomas Daig, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Dwight Drummond has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6. I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night, everyone.